Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to grecochess, the YouTube channel of chess, where we discuss, we analyze, we comment, and we talk about the game of chess. In this video, we continue facing the chess.com bots, and it's time for a bot called Pablo from Colombia, whose rating is 1600. In the previous video, we defeated Pablo with the white pieces, and now it's time for me to have the black pieces, and Pablo has the white. And let's share the screen with you. Here we are. Pablo, 1600 from Colombia, as you see here, says, I've been waiting. He says, hola, would you like a game? I should warn you, I've been practicing. That's what Pablo said in the last video, but let's see what's going to happen now. As you see here, Pablo is an advanced bot. Advanced are the bots whose rating is at least 1500. We defeated the first 1500 bots, and now it's time for the next 1600 bots, starting with Pablo. Let's see what will happen now. She starts with the pawn going to e4, and I reply with my French defense, pawn to e6. Ah, the art of French cooking. Let's see who is going to cook whom now. Pawn to d5 for me. And the advanced variation, pawn to e5. You see here is the French defense advanced variation. And I reply, pawn to c5. Until here, this is standard. My knight will go to c6 to attack the pawn on d4. If he takes my pawn on c5, my bishop will take back. No, his knight goes to f3. This is the Paulsen attack. That's the name of it. I didn't even know that name. Queen to b6. We're both fighting for d4 pawn. And here, ladies and gentlemen, one needs to be very, very careful. I'm going to explain what Pablo would like me to do. He would like me to take the pawn. He takes back. I take the knight. Pablo takes the knight. And queen takes the pawn on d4. It seems that I'm winning because I got a pawn. The pawn on d4 is attacked 3 times, defended only twice. But if I play like that, look what nasty trap Pablo has planned. His bishop will go to b5 check, and no matter what I do with my king, his queen will take my queen. I know there are too many arrows, but try to visualize it. If you have a chessboard with you, great. But once again, the series of moves. Pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn, knight takes knight, queen takes knight, and then bishop goes to b5 check. And no matter what I do, whether I move my king or place my bishop, whatever, his queen takes my queen. But I'm not falling for that. Instead, I'm going to do something else. Knight goes to h6. Let me explain before I do it and before Pablo replies. If he decides to take my knight, I take the pawn on b2, threaten the rook on a1, and while he's saving his rook, I get back the bishop and I have an extra pawn. That's why I'm playing knight goes to h6. But let's see, will Pablo take it? Nope. But he leaves the pawn on b2 undefended. Is it a free pawn? I've tried many times, I've been burned quite a few times. What can Pablo do? Place the bishop on c1. How can Pablo attack my queen? First, Pablo needs to save the rook, and I'm going to send my queen as back as possible. Yes, now be careful. Rook may go to b1. So what I want to do now is, can I take the pawn on d4? I can take the pawn on c3, but it is safe. The knight on d2 is pinned, so nothing that Pablo can do with the knight on d2. Anything else? Maybe the rook can go to c1, but queen goes back to a5. Let's try it. 2 pawns until now, good for me. He's attacking my knight on b5. And what I want to do, first of all, forget about the pawn on d4. Attack it 1, 2, 3 times, defending it once, twice, but my knight on c6 is pinned. Let me unpin my knight. Anything else I can do? I can also, yes, develop my knight on h6, not a good square. Let's send it to f5 and attack the bishop on e3. win the bishop. So I have the two bishop advantage. Can I take the pawn safely? Not too much, because if knight goes here, attacks my knight twice. I'm going to place my bishop on d7 and continue my development, because Pablo has castle and I have not. Bishop takes bishop, great. Knight goes to g5. I think Pablo missed something. I'm going to take the pawn on e3 with a check, and then I'm going to win the knight. Is it safe? Let's give a look. The pawn on e3 is safe, very safe. So Pablo can either put his rook on f2 or his king on h1. No matter what he does, I'm going to win the knight. Not the mate this time. Nice try. Then go for the mate, Mr. Pablo. Went for your knight. Later, what did he do? He can attack my queen with his knight to f3. But my queen has plenty of squares to go. No, queen attacks queen and they attack the pawn on h7. Okay, on f7, this pawn, and I don't want it to be attacked. I'm going to defend it with my queen. I'm already +6 in material. What else can happen? I have one more free pawn to win. But am I safe? That's a big question. I'm +7 material. Knight attacks the pawn. You can take it, Pablo, because then guess what's going to happen? My queen is going to pin your knight. If I castle, my pawn on f7 is lost, but I'm so much ahead in material. I don't worry. What if my bishop attacks the knight? No, the queen. If it costs a pawn, so be then my pawn on here is attacked. What if I move my pawn and be prepared for a check later? I'm not sure what I should do. If I also castle, the rook can go to c1 and attack. I want to develop my bishop on f8. Let's move the pawn to g7. Attacking now the pawn on e5. Queen goes to g3. Why? To defend the pawn on e5. But this means that my pawn on f7 is not in danger any longer. Now I can also castle. I'm going to castle kingside. So don't have to worry. If I castle queenside, the rook on c1 is opposite my king. I don't like it. Rook goes to kingside castle. He won the pawn, and I'm going to. No, I cannot pin the knight because the rook on c1. And if I let things go the way they are, I'm going to lose a pawn. Any danger from the knight? Not yet. So let me put my rook on c8 so I don't lose the pawn. What can I do? I want to change as much as possible. But how? What if my bishop goes back to d7 and I'm inducing Pablo to exchange rooks? Yes, good. Since I'm already ahead by +6, meaning light piece and 3 pawns, I want as many exchanges as possible. But now we have a problem. I wish I could exchange queens by checking on c5, but knight will take my queen. It's not so simple as that. What if I attack the knight and no matter where it goes, then I check? Good. We exchange. How will she take back with the pawn or the queen? With the pawn. So I can easily check now. After exchange queens, the pawn on e5 is mine. Not so easily, but okay. Here we're going to exchange queens. So after that, much less to worry about. We exchange queens. I'm winning the pawn. Rook attacks. If I could place my bishop on g3 safely, there is a stew. I would win the at least an exchange, but no. I'm going to check from d4. If I check from c2 and king goes to d3, I wouldn't like it too much. Because I have two pieces under attack. I want my bishop to be safe. Let's send it to g7, fianchetto, to have the long diagonal. Let's threaten the pawn on b3. I think by now I'm completely winning. It goes next door. I win it. And check from here, from b2, supported by my bishop on g7, and then I win the pawn on h2. Good. The chances that Pablo can use the pawn to promote are minimal, to put it mildly. Do I have worries about back rank? No. If you check from here, I have my bishop on f8. Let's go for the pawn on g3. Want to check? Yes, I have my bishop. It's not a pawn. If it was a pawn, that would have been back rank. Win the pawn on g3, so Pablo has no pawns. Just has a rook. The rook and the king, and I have rook, bishop, and 7 pawns. I've only lost 1 pawn since the game started. Let's protect the weakest pawn that is on a7. Let's start pushing. Which pawn? Let's the h. I mean, I can do anything I like, but let's play it as safely as possible. Constrain the king on the first rank. Pawn to h4. Now let's see how can Pablo stop it. It's far away from his rook. His rook first has to go to the c file. Doesn't even want to do it. Nope. Rook goes here to g2. Yes, he's got... If I check with the queen, rook goes there. He'll take my queen for his rook. But I have rook and 7 pawns. Let's do it. It's a new piece, you can keep it. Yes, I cannot keep it, but I got your rook for that. Last time I got your knight. Now, what do we need to do is push a pawn to promote. Let's start with the a pawn because it's on the side. You may think that the d is a little bit further, but the a pawn is easier because it's an outside pawn. I have to be careful with stalemate traps. Meaning, if I go, my pawn goes to a2 check and his king goes to a1, if I move anything else, it's stalemate. I'm not going to fall for that, not this time. Okay, now it's over. And yes, this time we won. We didn't fall for any stalemate tricks, or not that many. And lack of skill, let's find out. Can I have another try? Well, I beat you twice with both colors. After that, it's time for the next spot. But let's review. Let's see what the review has to say about this game. How well did we play? 85.7% for Pablo, 94% for me. So Pablo played as if his rating was 1500, a little bit below his 1600, and I played as if my rating was 2300. Just to tell everybody, officially my rating is 1631 for the month of February. Unofficially, it has dropped a little bit to 1620 after the Chessanity. How do we do the various categories? No brilliances. I had 2 great moves. Book 6 versus 5 for Pablo. Let's see where did they deviate from theory. Best 13 for Pablo, 24 for me. Excellent, 24 Pablo, 18 for me. Good, 2 Pablo, 1 for me. And inaccuracies, 3 Pablo, 2 for me. Mistakes, 1 Pablo, and blunder, 1 for Pablo. But let's give a look at the various moves. Let's see, where do we deviate from theory? Five moves theory. We've been following theory completely. And Pablo has an advantage of 0.2. Let's see how the game continues. This is the last theoretical move. You can see it here. When you say book, it means the last theoretical book move. And what I decide to do is knight to h6. That computer thinks it's inaccuracy. Why does a computer want me to take on d4 and says and win material after the follow-up trades? If the computer thinks, can I do it here or not? Will the computer allow me to do it here? And what's the best for Pablo? Book move? I'm supposed to play here. I'm curious, what does the computer suggest? No. The computer wants me, doesn't even say what it wants me to do. So that's why I decided not to go for anything like that. And I decided to place my knight on h6. Because I want to bring my knight on f5 and attack once more the pawn on d4. It doesn't even say what it would like. It only wants me to take the pawn on d4. The question isn't then, pawn takes on d4. I don't know what the computer would like. Let's see. But bishop to e3 is a blunder, says the computer. Yes, that's exactly what's happening. And now I'm really start being ahead. Of course, I'll take the pawn here. This is a great move. Too obvious, I would say. But one needs to make sure that the queen is safe there because too many times the big pawns are poisoned. Knight to d2. No, computer would rather have us exchange queens. Queen to b3 and we exchange because then the game continues. I'm a pawn up. Pablo has a little bit better control of the center because now the bishop on e3 becomes quite powerful. I would have exchanged queens had that come, had Pablo sent his queen to b3. I don't want my queen on b2 to be in danger. To c3, I won another pawn. Bishop to b5. Good idea. My knight goes to f5. Yes, especially without worrying about the bishop on d3. And it's true what it says. You move your knight away from the edge of the board, giving control of more squares. Inside castling, excellent. I take the knight, excellent. It was an even, but usually a bishop is slightly better than a knight. So in this case, I would have what's called the pair of bishops. What does this mean? It's after this, and of course, I'm going to lose the knight. I have both dark and light color bishops, and Pablo has only the light color bishop. Of course, Pablo has two knights versus one, but this is a small advantage, especially near the end, because the bishops can control the whole chessboard, which the knights cannot. But after the 10 moves, let's see how things are going. I have an advantage of 2.4, or if you want the second decimal digit, 241. Of course, Pablo took it. Bishop to d7, why? I don't want my knight on c6 to be painted. Good move. Oh, I missed the check immediately. Could have taken the pawn on e3 immediately and then painted that. I win and I take back with my bishop, just explain, because I don't want my pawns to be doubled. But computer would prefer if first I took the pawn and then after the check I can take back. And this is a mistake, and only now I see the trick. On the third on the third opportunity, I saw I could take the pawn on e3. But this time it's even better. Don't just win a pawn, I win also the knight. Of course, great. And I win the knight. But you saw that although it was wonderful to win this material, how much I hesitated before taking it. One always need to double check, make sure there are no swindles, traps, catches, that you're not just going to win something to lose something even more important later. 3. Queen to e7. Computer would rather have my queen to g6. Yes, it's more control and still protects the f7 pawn. But before that, we completed 15 moves and my advantage has become 3.9. Let's continue. Or 398, almost 4. I win the pawn. Now, this I was very reluctant to play any move at the time. You may remember when it was time, I was thinking push the pawn to d4, attack the knight, or long side castling. Finally, I decided to move the pawn to g6. Why was I reluctant for this move? Because it weakens my dark colored squares. h6, f6, g7. If the queen can take control of them, now it cannot because now they're well protected. But if things are changing, queen could take control of that, or even the knight could come, it would be very tough for me. But the advantage is that now the bishop from f8 can move. Before it was blocked by its own queen, but now the bishop from f8 can go to g7. That is why the computers places a star, meaning best move. It says great job. That's what I would have played too. Let's continue. Rook to c1. Yes, now forget about queenside castling. Place my king on c8 and rook on d8. Bishop to g7, of course, fianchetto. Bishop is on the long diagonal and attacks the pawn on e5, which is the most advanced pawn of black. Queen to g3 protects the pawn, even though the computer would rather have knight to a5. By doing so, it threatens the pawn on c6. Kingside castling for me. Knight takes pawn, but the pawn was lost either way or other. And for me to get a better position was worthwhile to lose it. Rook to c8. Computer wants the queen to go to c7, but I don't want then my bishop on c6 to be pinned against the queen. It's true I attacked twice the pawn on e5, but it's dangerous and I'm already so much ahead. I don't want any surprises, either losing a queen or having to lose a bishop to keep my queen. And now we're at the 20 move level, and what is the score? I'm ahead by 5.11. My advantage becomes larger and larger. I want to change looks. I'm ahead. Move the bishop to a better square. I'm not sure how better it is because it's blocked by the pawn on e6, but I want to exchange rooks, or if Pablo does not, then I get control of the c file, open c file. We exchange. In fact, the computer thinks the best move for Pablo is to exchange the rooks. Why do I attack the knight? Of course, the bishop is more than the knight, but if I get control of if I can exchange knight, or if the knight moves, queen goes to c5, and we exchange queens because the queen on e3 is pinned against the king. If the knight went to d5, would not be pinned. I could still put my queen on c4. Things would not be so simple. See, I'm winning ahead, very much ahead, but my plan of exchanging queens could not proceed. Exchange the knight, so yes, you see, the computer saw this trick. That's why I wanted to change the queen. So this is a check, and the queen is not pinned. I'm threatening to force eventual checkmate, maybe the lockdown, but most of all, I want to exchange queens because then the danger of an accident happen, meaning Pablo finding a tricky combination with queen and rook when I least expect it, when I'll be, for example, gobbling his pawns, this danger would be minimized. Now, Pablo wants to avoid exchanges, but I'm exchanging. Taking a pawn. Rook attacks pawn. I'm checking. And I'm saving the bishop. Very good choice. What would have been the best? To push the pawn. Okay, maybe, but then the other pawn on d5 is unprotected. Rook to c3. We finished 30 moves. And what is the score? I'm ahead by 6-15. The difference becomes enormous. Take another pawn. Check. take another pawn, I win one pawn after the other, save this pawn, attack the other pawn, and now if Pablo wants to define it, the only way he can do it is rook to g1, but then his rook becomes very weak, to say the least, with very little activity. And after the first 35 moves, I'm ahead by 6.63. My advantage becomes bigger all the time. Rook, but my bishop defends the check. That's one of the roles of the bishop on f8. It controls the long diagonal, but also in case of a check, at least there is a response. I'm not back rank checkmated. I'm winning the pawn. I'm liberating my bishop. It's not pinned any longer. Sending it to a3 to protect the pawn at a2, which is the only pawn until now not protected by anybody else. Attacks it, but my rook defends it. I'm constraining, but let's see after the 40 moves. I forgot to look at the score. After the first 40 moves, I'm ahead by 6.98. I'm constraining the king on the first rank. If white can place the rook on the 7th rank or black on the 2nd rank, especially on an empty board, that is great because the white king cannot go anywhere other than the first rank. So now finally, after 695, we see m12. I have made in 12 moves if I play correctly. How many did I need? I needed 11, which means that Pablo did not defend perfectly, but that wouldn't make any difference. 11, and this is m6. The king should go to the other side. This is m6 now for me. m5, m4, m4. Now it's m3. Rook goes to here, to c7 to block the check. m4, m4, m5. There are better ways, maybe, but I'm not taking any chances. a6, I'm not going the fastest way. Computer would rather have my pawn be pushed, but then the king is near the pawn. Well, if this pawn goes ahead, king has to stay on a1, then I can do something else. So long as I'm aware of this stalemate trap. And 5 and 4. And here there is a big trap. If I send my pawn to a2, king goes to a1. And if I don't move my rook on g2 or I leave it on the 2nd rank, it's stalemate. If I move it away with a check on g1 or elsewhere, I'm losing the a3 pawn. I don't want this to happen. Once I suffered because of that and the completely winning game, this was in fact against one of the bots, ended up being a stalemate. That is why I just moved my bishop here. Now king has only one. No, it can go b1 or a1. Computer says they played one of the best moves here. The only choices were b1 or a1. But now if king went to a1, let's do the arrows to see what would happen. King goes to a1 and my bishop goes to d5 check, king goes back to here. And now this check here, king cannot go here. They must go to c1. And that is made. That is why moving my bishop to c5 was a critical move. Did we see? We didn't see the score after the 50 moves. Yes, it is m4, m3, m2, m1, and that's it, and mate. This means that let's go back to the previous bots. We defeated the first 4 advanced bots, meaning with 1500 it was Wendy with Antonio and Pierre. With 1600 was Pablo. And the next one will be Joel from Albania. Who starts by telling us, hello, do you study openings? I don't. Let's see what Joel will do. But what do we have in the meantime? This evening, Queen Chess Club, they have an interesting tournament called the Quad. What's going to happen is they're going to divide the players by groups of 4 depending on their ratings. So I'm going to play, assuming all goes okay, 3 players of the same rating with me, and each game lasts if every player has only 30 minutes on their clock instead of their usual 90 minutes. 30 minutes with delay of 5 seconds. Hopefully, if I come back with the score sheets, in the next 3 videos, I'm going to show what happened there. Then we have, of course, puzzle rush. Then we'll continue with Joel. But let's give a look at what happens at my terms and following. Let's see. We're still 1 game away from grecochess. Yes, as you see, nothing changed here. 5 points, Barak 7. 4 points, Maxim Govorukha. One last game remaining, and we need to wait until the game is over. And let's see what's happening with the moonlight underwater. Underwater moonlight. So we are second round. 28 out of the 81 players continue. Not too much has changed. Zanilor has 9 games to complete. He's only completed 1 out of the 12, excuse me, 3 out of the 12 games. And what else is happening? And there is 1 game with Canon 972 versus Khaled Katab that is not Zanilor's. That is in Group 1. Group 2, 3, we know who has advanced. Group 4, we also know, even though officially they have not announced it. The top 3 never released. With the bots, which happen. If we can continue being victorious, my plan is to continue all the advanced bots. The last one is Oscar 2100. These are going to be very tough because even though the bots may be playing a little bit below their official strength, after a while they would be really a tough challenge for me. Not only mistakes will not be forgiven, they'll find very quote-unquote nasty ways to destroy me without me realizing what's happening. But we'll go there and we're going to learn along the way. We have another 2 of 1600, then we have 3 of 1700, 3 of 1800, 3 of 1900, 3 of 2000, and 2 of 2100. Once they are over, I'm going to the master boards, assuming we can survive them. There are 10 of them. Yes, 2 of them have 2200. 3, no, sorry, 4 of them have 2200. Then we have 2 of them with 2300 and 2 last ones with 2450. So see how far we can go, because if at some point I continue losing all the time, it's going to be the end. Well, yes, I may play a second or a third time a bot, but if I see that it's hopeless, it's over. But if we can survive them, then we have the top players. I'm going to find in random order, so I'm going to find the ones that will be higher than 2450 and then play them from the weakest to the strongest. And let's see who is strongest. Is Magnus anywhere? This is Nakamura, clearly. Hikaru Nakamura, 2820. Who else among the very top ones? This is Fabiano Caruana, 2840, a little bit higher than him. And Magnus Carlsen, 288.82. We'll see if we can survive. Let's first survive the advanced ones. And then see what we can do the masters if we survive the advance. But we have lots of time until then. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. Thanks to all the viewers, subscribers, the likes and the comments. If you have not subscribed, please consider doing so. This is grecochess. I'm your host, Harry Lausaneziris, and for now, goodbye.